the death of Jonathan Demme. I want to get everyone's impression on the output of this great director, who I know that we all appreciate him, and I really liked him. He was I think everyone that ever encountered him outside of Goldie Hawn thought he was really, really a sweet man.
Don't make me cough like that, man. But yeah.
It's funny. The reaction that, well, of course, I was saddened by it, but I read some of the reactions of some of my fellow movie geeks on Facebook and so forth, and all of them were very respectful, obviously, and everything, but a few of them really rubbed me the wrong way, and I kept seeing it. I saw it at least 3 or 4 times where they said, well, he's a good craftsman, but he wasn't really an auteur. And I said, it was everything I could do to keep from, writing a huge missive back to them saying, I don't know what you're talking about, because he was an auteur. He had a very specific stamp, not only visually, but in the way that he told the story, in the sort of novelistic way. I mean, if you look at Handle with Care, the CB radio movie, which is also called Citizens Band, Melvin and Howard, even Swing Shift, and Something Wild, and Married to the Mob, you don't even have to have the sound on to know that they come from the same director. You can look at them and tell. Now, when you cut the sound on, that's where it becomes really obvious, because the guy had a mastery of using music in movies, particularly pop music and world pop music. From all around the world, and that continued all the way to the very end with Ricky and the Flash.
Absolutely.
And of course, let's don't forget the elephant in the room. Stop Making Sense, and his other music documentaries.
The Neil Young one that came out like 10 years ago. The one which is just a straight concert film. And really, I went to AFI to see that. I don't know of another director that could have pulled that off that well on the big screen.
By the way, also, I mean, I think he made multiple Neil Youngs, he also just last year made the Justin Timberlake film, which ended up on several top 10 lists for the end of the year.
And also, Storefront Hitchcock, which was about Robin Hitchcock. So, I mean, and also he directed. I don't know if many people know this, but he also directed Sun City. That the Artists Against Apartheid thing that came out in the 80s.
He also, Dean. I mean, before we go any further, let's not forget the 2 political documentaries he made. At least the 2 political documentaries he made this century. The Agronomist and Jimmy Carter, Man from the Plains, both very good documentaries. I mean, superb. That was great films.
That was the other part I was going to bring out, was the political side of him, which was obviously he was a director that believed in his narrative films, believed in characters that really push back against society in some way. And also, but that carries back over into his documentary work, which really sort of controls the last third of his career. He started off. His career kind of went in 3 stages, with the Roger Corman stuff, then with the meat of his career in the 80s and 90s, and then the last phase, which is I would say a little bit more of an activist kind of career than one that was out for big bucks at the box office. But
can we talk about his relationship to actresses? Because I think we always talk about Woody Allen and Pedro Almodovar. He had a unique relationship with actresses. He wrote superb parts for women. Even if the movies were not 100% successful, he really gave his actresses. And let's talk about Meryl Streep. Regardless of what we think about the remake of The Manchurian Candidate, it doesn't work on all thrusters, but it is a fascinating performance from Streep. It is something that I think we'll be talking about decades from now, that performance, because I do think it's
well, and what he does with somebody like with Melanie Griffith in Something Wild, or even somebody like Mary Steenburgen and Melvin and Howard, and
or Michelle Pfeiffer.
You know, the thing that I caught on to in the various posts I've read. First of all, I was thrilled that a lot of people mentioned what I like best about his movies is that you get a sense of a real humanist, and we need more filmmakers like that. There's this kind of overwhelming love of humanity in his movies, and even in something like Silence of the Lambs. So this is the other thing that I've seen mentioned. There seems to be people went sour on him after Silence of the Lambs. I think it's the whole thing of, well, once he hit mainstream success, he became less interesting. I guess maybe you can make a case for that his movies prior to that were more eclectic. But Silence of the Lambs, pretend like it didn't win Best Picture and hundreds of millions of dollars. That is a very eclectic movie for Jonathan Demme to tackle. For Jonathan Demme to do a movie of that sort.
To follow up Married with the Mob, which is which is a pretty crazy, wacky movie. It's
a very fun movie, though. It's a very fun. I mean, but let's go. All right, I guess we're talking about after Silence of the Lambs. Philadelphia is the first movie, right? After Silence of the Lambs,
right? Other than he's also getting the bad rap for.
Yeah.
Let's talk about.
He also did the documentary Cousin Bobby. You know.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's good call there. But let's talk about Philadelphia for a second. We always, everyone always makes the big deal about Tom Hanks, but it's Denzel Washington that really has the truly moving performance in that film. Because
I agree.
I mean, because his character changed. I mean, it's like I hate to say it, but it's like screenwriting 101. But it's his character that actually goes through a change. And
it's the same thing with something like Rain Man belonging to Tom Cruise, because that's the other person set in one gear and one person changed. But with Philadelphia, he got a bad rap for not showing kissing between two lovers, between Tom Hanks and Antonio Banderas. That was the big beef. And he said, look, I understood that I was making a mainstream movie. The motive of this movie was to get it in front of as many eyeballs as possible with major movie stars as the first big studio AIDS movie. And he said, we had enough stumbling blocks to get to Joe Schmo in Middle America with this thing. And Philadelphia meant a lot to people. The fact that it broke the mold in just doing that, a mainstream movie about the AIDS crisis. And when I watched that movie and talk about visual style, I mean, it's in Silence of the Lambs and his other movies, certainly, but in Philadelphia, the whole mode he has of having the actors look directly into the camera, and he employs it to such great effect in Philadelphia because the camera actually, when Tom Hanks first visits Denzel Washington's office, and the camera's panning where Denzel Washington's looking at every object in the office that Tom Hanks is touching, because there's such fear, and that's how he expresses that fear that Denzel Washington has. And by the way, also with Denzel Washington, you have a major Hollywood actor who's playing a guy that says right up front, let's talk about our hatred of homosexuals, our fear of them, because I'm guilty of that. Essentially, that character said, and that in itself was a brave thing as well.
Right. I think what I noticed that too, Dean, and a lot of people said, well, he hadn't made anything good. But look, he gave us Thandie Newton. He made Thandie Newton a mainstream actress, regardless of what we think of Beloved. Even though Beloved is like, how shall we say it, is overshadowed by Oprah Winfrey, he does bring Thandie Newton into the mainstream. The other thing that I think people is the last movie. I know you're not crazy about it, Dean. I like it, Ricky and the Flash. But it is actually, given recent events, Meryl Streep is, I don't think I've ever seen an actor or actress play so against type as Meryl Streep in that movie in recent history.
I don't think it's entirely successful, but at least
I know, but let's give it.
She did a credible job.
Nice if you can. Let's say something nice about it if you
can. Well, I mean, one of the great things I can say about it is it deserved Best Song for Cold One,
right.
Which I thought was a wonderful scene and a wonderful song. And that would have been a great thing for a Jonathan Demme to win Best movie to win Best Song. And of course, I think his last great, really, really good movie was Rachel Getting Married. That's obviously a high point in the last third of his career, but and a low point too would be Truth About Charlie.
I think that is the low. I think that's just the kind of movie you're just like, what were you thinking?
He might have just wanted to go on a vacation or something or to shoot in other places. But to me, the people who kind of forgot about him after things like Beloved and so forth, which I've never seen. That's the one that I still haven't seen. But
it's a curiosity.
And I've never seen. I've also never seen the Peter Fonda Corman movie that he did, Fighting Mad. I've never seen that one. But
neither have I. Oh well. Okay.
I found a copy of it online, so I did start watching it. It was a little brutal for me, but especially in terms of Jonathan Demme. But for me, the great thing out of his career is still Stop Making Sense. If he hadn't of in Stop Making Sense, he was coming off of Swing Shift, and he had a bad experience with that. And by the way, if you go back and look at Swing Shift, it's still a good movie. It's got great female performances in it too, from Goldie Hawn and Christine Lottie, who was nominated for an Oscar for it. But he was coming off of that, had a bad experience with that, and you can feel that Stop Making Sense sort of freed him again. And there's a true sense of soaring as a director. You can feel him soaring, watching that movie. It's the Talking Heads get co-directing credit, but they really directed the stage part of the show. He's the one directing the film part of the show, and it is pure cinema. It is not just a movie for fans. I think you'll be converted to a fan once you see it, but it is a movie. It is a movie. It is just a huge visual and oral experience, and it just can't be denied. I mean, I think that's his real crowning achievement. Even though most people would say it's Silence of the Lambs, which I love, but I've had a little enough of, to tell you the truth.
Right. Well, when I think about the markers of his career, I mean, there's some absolutes. His interest in people, his humanity, his devotion to kind of his ear for regional music, and some of the collaborations he's had, like with his Tex Fujimoto, who's done great work with him as a cinematographer and that sort of thing. But really, I mean, he did branch out quite a bit. You did get the sense that he wanted to expand his wheelhouse throughout his career, and he did it. He made a go of it. Let me just say, like when we interviewed him in 2012, 2013, something like that, it was for a music documentary that he did on I think a Brazilian musician, and it was being released something like 26 years to the day of Stop Making Sense. So we talked a little bit about that. He was late to the interview because he hadn't arrived at his office yet, and he was very apologetic about it. But and he was so sweet. I mean, I got off the phone with him. I thought, what a nice man. So you could feel that just in a 30-minute conversation with him. And you hear from like Barry Jenkins for Moonlight when Jonathan Demme was sick and nobody knew. Just last year or earlier this year, he moderated Q&As with Barry Jenkins to kind of champion Moonlight because he loved that movie. He had nothing to gain in that, you know.
And also, my friend Alex Johnson, the director of Two Step, he who lives in Austin, he entered into a director symposium that was chaired by Demme and Richard Linklater. And he had nothing but great things to say about him. And he, from the photos, you can tell that Demme is probably sick at that point. He always gave time to new filmmakers, and was concerned with what they were doing. Just incredibly generous, and then you hear from other film critics who became friends with him. He became friends with film critics. So that's you hear from some of them, and they would recognize each other at airports and stuff, and have little chats and stuff. So I think that's just wonderful. He was obviously, somebody who embraced people, and you can just tell it in his movies too. I mean, he has such immense understanding, especially in those early '80s movies. Melvin and Howard and Handle with Care. You can really sense his empathy towards these people. Even though they're highly misunderstood and very quirky, I think he embraced that about them. He loved the quirks, and
with
something
an edge,
wild,
and with an edge too, in a way that was not precious. I mean, like Something Wild under a lesser director, it would have been, oh, aren't they cute and aren't they, in quotes, quirky? Don't you just love them? And then you have this major tonal shift in Something Wild. It's just jaw-dropping. And an introduction to Ray Liotta for a lot of people in that movie.
Right.
I mean, he really came out in a big way in that film.
He was just a major filmmaker. Let's just face it, and it's a loss.
Yeah, it is.
It's a big loss.
Okay, Adam's on the line.
It is.
Adam, what's your favorite Demme?
Favorite Demme? I'm probably going to go with Dean on the Stop Making Sense. That's just phenomenal filmmaking. Setting it aside from the concert realm, it really is just pure cinema, like he said, and I totally agree with that. Although there are a lot of other ones, Melvin and Howard, I've always been a big fan of that, and the guilty pleasures. Some of those earlier Corman ones, if I'm in the right mood, like Caged Heat.
they're among the better. Caged Heat and Crazy Mama are amongst the better Corman movies of that period, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I'll tell you a movie that I really like that he did that doesn't get enough attention is the documentary he did about Jimmy Carter in 2007, The Man from Plains.
I still need to see that.
It's a great movie.
It really is, and it's one of his lesser-known films, and I'm a Jimmy Carter fan. I mean, let's face it, I'll just go ahead and say it, and whether or not you will be by the time that movie is over, I guarantee, because his humanity and concern for other people just bleeds through every frame of that film, for me anyway. You just see him, doing, and for a guy that was in his probably mid-80s at that point, at least early 80s, and he's just, the energy level that he captures on film of him just, he's on a book tour, and he captures him, just...
remember, a very controversial book tour.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, remember, he is...
The Palestine...
he's calling out... I mean, he's using the word apartheid and for the group of people who are very offended And those couple of years there, it's very rocky, and it was a very bold, very brave of him. I really commend him for doing that. But yeah, that documentary is so important, and you're right, Adam. It just doesn't get the attention it deserves. I mean,
I got to see it. There's, I want to mention a few other things. I don't know what we all feel about Last Embrace, the Roy Scheider, Janet Margolin thing thriller that he did. It's not entirely successful, but it is entertaining, and it is kind of a departure for him, especially in that period of his career where he's really trying to do something a little different. But also, there are two television projects that he did. One he did for American Playhouse, which is also, very rarely mentioned. But it's called Who Am I This Time? And it's with Susan Sarandon and Christopher Walken playing two amateur actors who are in love and trying to get through a new play. And that's very wonderful. It's only an hour long, and I think you can still find it. I found it on once on Amazon Prime. But also he produced a really great, and again, this is another thing that he did with music. He produced a really great TV show called Alive from Off Center that came on in PBS in the 80s and would feature, live performances from Laurie Anderson or Eric Bogosian, and of course Spalding Gray. We're not even mentioning Swimming the Kids,
right? Yeah,
which is another masterpiece that absolutely has his stamp on it. I mean, for anybody to say that he wasn't an auteur, it's just get the fuck out of here.
Oh man, definitely get the fuck out.
He was somebody who had his own particular stamp on things.
Would it be fair to say that the people saying this don't know what the hell an auteur is? Could we actually say that?
They have some kind of they have some kind of mistaken idea that you have to be able to tell from one shot that this is directed by this person, or else you don't qualify. But I would contend that you can tell from one shot. if you see a shot from a Jonathan Demme movie, I think you could be able to tell. The actors.
I think so. I have to say I agree with you, Dean. I think can I just, going back to the auteur thing? I think I started watching 5, came back late last night. I still have to finish it, but go watch that and then get back to me about what you think an auteur is, guys.
Yes.
For those that were making that criticism, please.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was a craftsman, but he was one with personality and obvious personal concerns. Frankly, I just love the fact that he just embraced music in movies. I mean, I think those soundtracks for some of those movies are some of the best ones. I mean, if you could get a complete Something Wild soundtrack with every needle drop that's in that movie, that would be astounding. I mean, first of all, it'd probably be a triple album, But his mastery of that kind of stuff, and even going into things like music videos and stuff, and even special editions of video documentaries and things like that. He was amazing.
Well, I think he knew too. I mean, obviously he loved music, but he probably also knew that music was the fastest trigger to someone's humanity. I mean, it is in life. I mean, it's almost like you might as well be hooked up to an IV and you're being pumped in humanity when you listen to some songs that recall a memory or a moment or an emotion. They work a lot faster than movies do.